It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Yes, that's right, everyone. You are with 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside championship banner unveiling enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, the Chiefs are 1-0. How are you feeling?
I only have to be that enthusiastic once a year, and in this case, just a couple years. So, I mean, I'll take it. Hey, it was a big moment that didn't get spoiled because of a foot placement in the end zone. So, sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be good.
Didn't get spoiled by the rain and the weather either. So.
Yeah.
A championship night all around for the Kansas City Chiefs, who moved to 1-0 on the season with a squeaking by of the Baltimore Ravens, 27-20. And as you mentioned, Nick, I mean, this came down to a toe tap. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't get much closer than that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Isaiah Likely, I mean, he had a really good game. He had a strong game, and he's one of the factors for that Ravens offense. Because when you look at that Ravens offense between Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Justice Hill in the flats, and Lamar Jackson taking out the scramble, all things that we talked about in the 40 Was a Mike show on Sunday, all those things came to light, and all those things were what really kept Baltimore in that game. And especially there towards the end, it really turned into the Lamar Jackson taking off or buying time to wear down the Chiefs defensive line, and Isaiah Likely getting open on a couple plays. Those were really what made the difference. And they went after Nick Bolton on a couple of those plays to be able to create that explosiveness and with Likely on a couple of those plays. And if Lamar was off on those final two throws, otherwise the Chiefs, they might be looking at a heartbreaking 0-1 loss. But thankfully, those did not happen, and the Chiefs are able to be 1-0, and those are the margins that win you games. So, I mean, it's literally just probably 2 to 3 inches of a foot out of bounds that made that happen.
Yeah, this game, it was interesting to me, Nick, because there's some great moments. I mean, we're going to go over those in a second. There were also some opportunities that I think that both teams, and probably more so the Chiefs, I think, left on the field. I think there was an opportunity for them to maybe put this game away a couple of different times.
Yeah.
Missed out on that. There's probably a few areas that, as Andy Reid did say, I mean, there's room for improvement. And it is week one. Some of the sloppy play and sloppy officiating probably owes to it the fact that it is week one. But let's start with the positives. And I mean, should we start anywhere else but Xavier Worthy?
Sure. Let's go there.
I mean, the guy's fast, Nick. I mean, I think the NFL has been put on notice that Xavier Worthy exists.
Well, I mean, the whole league, is watching tonight, even through the potential rain delay that pushed back the kickoff by about 20 minutes there. But yeah, I mean, between the fake counter reverse touchdown where he had the whole convoy of the Chiefs offensive line out there in front of him, to that crossing route that he had for a first down, and then the blown coverage with where Mahomes talked about that corner didn't go back far enough and there was no safety help over top, that Mahomes was able to turn into an easy touchdown. And probably It'll be tough for him to find that easy of a pass again to Worthy, but he took advantage of it while he had the opportunity, and that was one of the plays that was the big difference in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Worthy's speed wasn't necessarily the key to the touchdown pass. I mean, that was just kind of a blown coverage. He is not going to get more open than that, I don't think, possibly in his NFL career. But the reverse was something else. I mean, that absolutely, and that was not even top speed. I mean, that was just him. I mean, wasn't exactly a leisurely drive through the country on a Sunday afternoon, but I mean, he's got more gears than that, and the Ravens couldn't put a hand on him. I mean, I'm not sure that they were ready for the speed that Xavier Worthy has. And the question is going to be, is the rest of the league ready? Have they been put on notice? Are they going to see this coming down the road?
It's going to be something a lot of them are just going to have to experience. But the a lot of that Ravens game, they were basing a lot of what was going on off the AFC Championship game. A lot of what they were doing defensively, they were really kind of. I think they were expecting a lot more screen passes in the flats than what they got. They were pretty comfortable with slowing down the Chiefs' run with Pacheco and everything, because the Chiefs were running a lot of what they did in the AFC Championship game. But the Chiefs had a nice little wrinkle for them whenever they weren't expecting them to take advantage of over the middle with Rice the way that they did, and being able to isolate Rice against the linebackers, against Harris, number 40, and then against Roquan Smith. They were not expecting that, and Kelsey took some doubles that allowed Rice to get open behind it or over top of it or in the crosser. So the Ravens were not expecting Rice to have the game that he did, and for the Chiefs to attack him the way that they did. They were expecting them to utilize Rice a lot more like they did in the AFC Championship game, and it just didn't work out. And that was without Hollywood Brown on the field. So, I mean, the Chiefs offense you saw tonight isn't even close to tapping the surface of what they could potentially be. They aren't even – that Chiefs offense I saw tonight, I don't even think is firing on 2 cylinders, let alone all of them.
Bold statement, Nick. I mean, they put 27 points up on what was one of the 3 best defenses in the league last year, and I mean, and I agree. I mean, I'm not poo-pooing you at all whatsoever, because they left some points on the field. I mean, there was a couple of opportunities that they had. Mahomes had a couple of throws that I know he would like to have back. But because they had some other opportunities, but this was a pretty solid performance. But here's the thing that, I mean, Nick, I saw what Rashee Rice was going to be doing tonight. I mean, and maybe hey, granted, that's because I was in St. Joe for 19 days and saw all those practices and saw Rashee Rice doing exactly this every single day. I mean, that to me is one of the things going forward, even though, you're going to get back Hollywood Brown, and in theory, it's going to be even easier for this team to be finding open receivers and open lanes and open windows. But, I mean, to what you said there, I mean, teams are going to have to change how they guard Rashee Rice, because you can't put a linebacker, you can't put a small corner. You're going to have to put a big body on him, or he's going to do this every single week.
And once they have Brown back, and if everybody can stay healthy, like that's part of the problem, though. It's like that's the whole purpose of why you have Brown, Worthy, and Rice, and we're not even really talking about Kelsey, and then we're not talking about some of the plays that Noah Gray is able to make off of it, and then Justin Watson was able to make off of it. So, when they really didn't get to utilize the running backs in the flats the way that they will in the weeks and months ahead. And they had Jared Wiley out there just to get him comfortable against that Ravens defense, but they didn't even really use Jared Wiley in the ways that I know they're more than capable of down the road here. So tonight, that's why I'm saying what I'm saying is like the Thursday night game was a lot of the Chiefs doing what they had to do to get a win, but not treat it like a January playoff game that they have to win and be firing on all cylinders. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. They did enough of what they had to. And another part of it is that the Chiefs offensive line, like they went up against a really good front. They went up against a very talented defense in the Baltimore Ravens. And I thought they did pretty well in the run, given the challenge that they had against that team. And this was a great challenge for this Chiefs offense to understand where they're at right now. And it's an even better challenge for Brett Veach and Andy Reid to see what they may need to add in the weeks ahead before they get to the playoffs. And the Bengals is going to be another good opportunity for them to be able to kind of see. And the 49ers will be a good opportunity here in a handful of weeks for them to be able to see as well. What do they potentially need to add before a trade deadline, or what do they need to sign in free agency to add to the pieces to really kind of put this team over the hump in a couple different spots?
And you mentioned one thing that I do find pretty interesting, because you talked about Jared Wiley. He played just 12 snaps, wasn't alone as far as some rookies in not playing much, because Jaden Hicks didn't take a defensive snap at all. He did play 21 special team snaps, was tied for a team high, but there looked like there was a little protection for those guys in a game like this. There wasn't any protection for Xavier Worthy, and obviously none whatsoever for Kingsley Suamataia. Kingsley's performance seems to be a little polarizing. It seems like there's some that think it was a great job, others like, well, there's a little bit to improve. First watch, Nick, what's your kind of first impressions about Kingsley's night?
Well, I mean, the one that people are going to keep locking in on is the sack that is going to end up getting credited to him. And what I can tell you about that is the defensive end on the other side was off. They had caused the false start. They were already out of their stance and potentially across the line of scrimmage by the time Juwan gets out of his stance and takes off. So, I mean, that was already what pressured Mahomes and moved him into where Kingsley may have not widened him. And that's something that Kingsley will learn from this game, is to continue to widen the defender just in case, the opposite side isn't able to win their angle as quickly as you're expecting him to with the way the play is designed. So, I mean, for the most part, look, he showed off his athletic ability, and he wasn't – I can tell you this. Tonight, the front that Kingsley went against, he was less of a liability than Wanya Morris was against the Raiders last year when he kept lunging at players and had some of the struggles that he did. So, I mean – you didn't notice Kingsley as much as I noticed Wanye a couple of times whenever he played at tackle last year.
There was also another curiosity on Thursday night, Nick, in that last year we remember Jawan Taylor getting picked on all season long for illegal formation and lining up in the backfield. None of those calls on Jawan Taylor on Thursday night, but the Ravens had 5 of them. I mean, night and day difference compared to what happened with Jawan last year. And talking to him in the locker room after the game, I mean, he mentioned the fact that he lost 10 pounds in the offseason because he felt like he needed to do that if he was going to have the same break, because he admitted, I mean, he was lining up deeper, to help him get a faster start. And without being able to have that start anymore, he felt like he had to lose a little bit of weight to generate some more quickness. We'll see in the long term if that's going to work. It looked like certainly for week 1, it looked like there was an improvement there from Jawan.
Yeah, part of it's alignment, but then, I mean, he honestly still had 3 false starts that could have been called.
Needs some cleaning up there, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's why I saw Harbaugh yelling, like, hey, you better call this both ways. We're going to call it, where he got very unhappy at one point, then the NBC cameras were able to catch it. Harbaugh was not happy with what he felt was a discrepancy in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, Wanye had the Chiefs got away with a couple there, but at the end of the day, I like to believe when it comes to officiating that it all kind of evens out, because there's a handful of plays that could have been called on the Ravens that weren't, like Mahomes getting pushed out of bounds, even though he's literally more than halfway out of the boundary, and Roquan pushes him out.
Interested in one thing, Nick, before we get into some of the challenges and opportunities missed that the Chiefs had Thursday night. Chris Jones. Came out like gangbusters in the beginning of the game. Absolutely seemed like he was going to could dominate the interior of that Baltimore offensive line. And it seemed that the Chiefs got a little bit away from that. I mean, Chris still had the sack and the strip, a huge play. I mean, that was an absolute game changer in itself, although the Chiefs did not capitalize on it as much as they could have. But what did you see from Chris Jones tonight?
Yeah, I mean, he started strong, like you said, early on, and he was able to be just a massive difference with how quickly he was beating the right guard, or how quickly he was beating outside wide when he was going up against the right tackle. Chris picked his spots at times, and he was able to cause a lot of disruption that Lamar wasn't comfortable with. And I would say more than anything else, I mean, Chris this is the probably, I mean, if you think about it during training camp, with how much practice Chris missed, like he isn't going to be at peak form like he will be later in the year. So I think there's some times where from a conditioning perspective, it may have been where he needed to kind of throttle back on a couple plays to kind of be able to make sure he could play all the snaps he was potentially going to be out there. Because I mean, right now Chris is the key to the Chiefs pass rush, and without Chris on there, that would have been an ugly night against Lamar. Lamar would have had all day long out there. And right now, the Chiefs along the defensive line just don't have Karlaftis can only do so much, and he's a complimentary guy, but they just don't have another guy along that defensive line right now from a pass rushing perspective that can be in the ballpark with Chris. So Chris isn't having to beat double teams all the time or try to figure out a way to isolate himself one-on-one against an offensive lineman so that he can try to be able to make some of those key plays like he did with being able to rip the ball out from Lamar because of how quickly he won the hand fight against the right guard.
And you hit it exactly where I wanted to ask next, because one of the opportunities the Chiefs would certainly seem to have going forward is improving the pass rush, because that was uneven, I think, is about the best thing I could say about it. Mm-hmm. Because normally the Chiefs against the Ravens are very disciplined, because one thing Spagnuolo has always wanted to do is that if Lamar Jackson's going to beat you, make sure he beats you with his arm. And they usually do a pretty good job of making sure that he stays in the pocket, setting the edges, not giving him any lanes to escape. There were lanes to escape all night long. And I mean, in the second half in particular, I mean, Lamar just took the game into his own hands. It's like, okay, I'm going to dance around. I'm going to buy time. I'm going to take off if I have to. And because the secondary was doing its job. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, they were getting coverage downfield. One sack and one hit on Lamar Jackson, not enough, is it?
No, I mean, Lamar ended up having to get to the point where he had to become their rushing attack. And so, I mean, with the Chiefs' defensive line win against this Thursday, technically, against the Ravens, they're not going to see on a weekly basis. Like, Josh Allen isn't going to attack the same way like this. Lamar's one of one when it comes to him running around. And from a throwing perspective, Lamar's going to, for the most part, read between the numbers and the route that they're trying to attack, one or two, hope that it's open or that it needs to be open. Or other times he's just scramble outside the pocket and be able to kind of chuck one up deep. But he's typically not going to push the ball downfield outside the numbers from standing in one spot. He's going to move around to kind of help create that torque and be able to kind of create that throw like he did with Bateman on the final drive there. But for the most part, I mean, he was having the success they were having for most of this game was either Zay Flowers on a crosser, Zay Flowers on something that would come open over the middle that he could throw to, Justice Hill in the flats, or getting likely either on a slant or a deep out or something of that nature, and kind of let use his athletic ability and size to really take over. So all that combined collectively in my book, like, I mean, that's what that Ravens offense is right now, where they try to get their offensive line to gel. Whether the offensive line gels or not, who the heck knows? But right now the Ravens don't have an athletic running back that terrifies you and can really take that rushing attack to a whole different level. Justice Hill to me is kind of more of a passing running back. I think he could be different in like a Chiefs offense, but in the Ravens offense that he's in, he's more of kind of a pass catching running back. And then the guy that they had last year, if I remember correctly, I believe it's Mitchell. Like the way he ended up hurting, tearing up his knee. I mean, he was kind of the guy that you were worried about would really kind of help turn that Ravens offense into something pretty wicked. And right now they just don't have a guy that creates bursts that can terrify you. They have a Derrick Henry that looked his age and looked his snaps for the most part. So yeah. And I know they put Allie on on IR, and then Keaton Mitchell's who I'm thinking of. He's on the PUP right now, and he had torn his ACL last year. So all those combined, those were part of it.
And notable to me, I mean, we talked about Lamar. You know, he did most of his damage, and I counted of his 16 rushes, 10 of them were scrambles. Only 6 of them were designed runs. And the designed runs weren't that effective. I mean, the Chiefs pretty much shut down that, and they shut down Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. But it was, I mean, the scrambles were the problem. I mean, and that's one thing that this defense is going to have to be working on going forward. But one thing we thought was going to be a deficiency, Nick, was the secondary, because there were so many questions about Jalen Watson and the number 2 corner. Secondary seemed like it did its job for the most part tonight, Nick, didn't it?
I'm gonna pause on that one for right now, because I think the Bengals game is going to answer where the Chiefs secondary is at.
Oh yeah.
This game answered where, in my opinion, where the pass rush is at over an extended period of time. The Bengals game is going to answer where the Chiefs are at from a secondary perspective, and it's also going to answer some of a pass rushing perspective yet again, because there's a lot. I know, I have no doubt in my mind when I watch the coach film, there's going to be other things that are going to be open that Lamar was not going to see if it was within the certain vision area that he has within that offense that he's comfortable with, that Joe Burrow will find and be able to throw open or be able to throw in general. And the Bengals have more wide receiver weapons that can cause the Chiefs some problems and headaches than what the Ravens do. So the Ravens are going to the Ravens presented a more physical, tough challenge, and they showed the Chiefs offense where they're at and what they're going to face come playoff time, because the Ravens are a playoff caliber team. And then they also showed them like where they're at as a run defense early on in the year. So that's why I think there's so much that both sides of the Chiefs, each phase, the offense and defense, so much that they gained to kind of gauge where they're at right now. And the Bengals are going to help take that to a whole nother level whenever they face them the following over a week from Sunday.
You know, last year, Nick, everything, it seemed like week in and week out was a struggle for this offense, especially, you know, with the receiving core. But Mahomes, 20 of 28, 291 yards and a touchdown, the interception. It plays into the question that I have, because the one, I think, offensively, the only thing you could really quibble with the offense tonight was just a couple of missed opportunities. They settled for field goals in a couple of spots. One of them had great field position, couldn't capitalize on it. There were a couple of drops. There was also just, you know, whether you want to say on the Pacheco throw that was just off his fingertips, and also the one through the hands of Samaje Perine. Those weren't great throws either by Mahomes. So I'm not letting him off the hook. I mean, those were not touch throws by Mahomes. I think he could have given them a little bit better ball to work with. Any concerns whatsoever about just some of the missed opportunities Thursday?
If this were further in the year, you'd be a little bit more frustrated with it. But, I mean, this is opening night. This is going to happen for even the best and potential playoff caliber teams, and you're going to see this happen across the league in various spots whenever you watch games on Sunday and then even into Monday. I mean, nobody's going to be flawless in this first week. And there's going to be mistakes and blown coverages. Some of that stuff's going to happen over the first 2 to 3 weeks. So, I mean, I think part of what's interesting about it is that once we've gotten back into the swing of football and everything, people are going to stop thinking back to where it ended last year. And what I mean by that is, like, we're all still used to seeing a certain caliber of football from the postseason last year. That's still what's ingrained in a lot of football fans' heads right now. And that's, you know, that was last year. And so, like, there's just, I think there's just an aspect of it right now that I hope I'm making sense here at 3:30 in the morning while we're taping this. But there's everybody's rusty right now. Everybody's rusty. In a lot of ways, everybody's basically been on from a player perspective on the football field. Everybody's been on what for most of us would be a weeks long PTO of vacation, or a couple weeks. Except for them, it's a handful of months. So I mean, there's a lot of things here and there that even the best veterans are gonna kind of struggle with. And if you think like back to the Ravens, I mean, most of those guys didn't even play in the preseason. They practiced, but this was, for a lot of them, this is their first game situations since the AFC Championship game. So for a lot of them to not have played, like Lamar didn't play in any of the preseason. And I know him and Derrick Henry didn't play in the preseason. I know that offensive line didn't play in the preseason. So, yeah, I mean, I know Harbaugh kept telling them before the game that this is going to be your worst game of the season. You can only get better from here and everything. And in some ways he's potentially right, but there are other ways to where like he's just saying that to them so that they realize that they can't get down on themselves because it's just one of 17 games that they have to get through to get to the potential playoff run that they're more than capable of.
Yeah, and one thing I want to kind of leave everybody on here is just to imagine and think about, if you will. Hey, 27 points last year would have been scored, tied for the fourth most that the Chiefs scored all season. The 281 net passing yards, I think, would have been seventh, of 20 games that they played last year, 21 games that they played last year. It would have been the top third of their offensive performances. And they did this, Nick, against the number one scoring team in the NFL last year, scoring defense in the NFL last year. If that's not at least a reason to give you some optimism and see what this offense can possibly do when it is firing on all cylinders, and it does have Hollywood Brown, you gotta be pretty excited about what could be lying ahead. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, like it's a situation right now to where, look, the key part is they came away with a win where they didn't play perfect football against a playoff caliber opponent that could easily find its way back in the AFC Championship game. So they were able to come away with a victory against that level of play. And they're not going to face that level of play every single week. That caliber of play, that type of roster, they're not going to face for 17 consecutive weeks. So some games are going to be easier to execute than this one was for them, and some may be different in different ways. But I'm just telling you, like, I mean, what that offense showed tonight, that's not even close to where I think this offense is going to be by the time, if they stay healthy, by the time they hit after Thanksgiving. I think this Chiefs offense it had hiccups in some spots. It had some execution errors. It had all that type of stuff. But that's what's going to happen in game number one. But at the end of the day, the difference in this football game came down to one simple theme, which is why the Chiefs have won the amount of games that they have since 2019. No matter if they play perfect or not, the Chiefs found a way to put themselves in a position to win the game and to have more points than their opponent by whenever the final hit zero. Now, was there some lucky moments there in that whenever Lamar was throwing to miss Zay Flowers and didn't throw it perfectly for Likely to get his foot in and everything? Yes, you're 100% right on that aspect. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs had to put themselves in a position to get to 27-20. And they did enough to execute at that point and to get to that spot to where they gave themselves a chance to win and found a way to win.
Well, Nick, we're going to wrap it up there because you are correct. It is 3:44 in the morning when we are signing off for you here. And don't fret, because we are going to be back in your thread, back on your streams, wherever you find us. You're going to find us on Sunday because it's Cincinnati Bengals week, and we're going to kick it off early for you on Sunday and start looking ahead towards the Bengals. For now, we'll put the final touches on this one. Nick, any parting thoughts for the Chiefs 27-20 win in week one?
I would say, does their red zone offense need to improve? Yes. Do some other aspects of their defense need to improve? Sure. But what matters at the end of the day is they won and they hold a tiebreaker over the Ravens if it comes down to it at the end of the year. And if they can get this win over the Bengals, the Chiefs put themselves in great position from a tiebreaker perspective with two AFC North teams that have the potential to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So the Chiefs can really put themselves in a phenomenal spot over a 2 week, over these 14 days if everything goes according to plan.
And we're going to find out next week if everything goes according to plan. Nick, thank you once again for a great day. I know how hard you worked today. You had a long day, Nick, and it's over now. One more thing to do. You have to edit the podcast, and then you get to go to bed. So thank you for your service.
No problem.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And like I said, we'll be back on your threads on you can tell it's 3:45 in the morning. I'm not making sense anymore, Nick. So I'm just going to say good night, good morning. Enjoy. We'll be back with you on Sunday. And another week of Chiefs football. Get ready for the Bengals next week.
Until next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.